What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Z-Man here, and as usual, my partner in crime, Bobby, who's the man, is joining me today. Say hello to everybody, Bobby.
Hello.
Alright, so Bobby is joining us here via phone, so, alright, so I guess let's get started. Where to begin? Jeez, there's so much going on. We missed out on so much over your decided perfectly timed holiday there. So, let's see. We got Ferguson going on. We still got more protests going on because of this whole incident that happened here in New York. I don't know if any of you are aware, there was a gentleman who was selling what they call on the streets Lucy's, or individual cigarettes, and he was approached by a bunch of plainclothes officers. And when they were trying to apprehend him for selling these cigarettes without a license, because he was obviously selling them without paying tax, one of the officers apprehended him by getting him in a chokehold. The man was obviously a large man. He suffered a heart attack from being asphyxiated, and he died. And now there's more protests going on here in New York because I don't believe they released the and whether or not they're going to indict the officers in that particular incident. But now there's even more unrest going on, and it's just things are getting crazy here in New York. I don't know. What do you think about that, Bobby? Have you kept up on that one?
No, actually, I don't know a whole lot about it. I don't even think that I've even seen that in the news or anything.
Well, I guess it got overshadowed by the whole Mike Brown case, but here in New York, like I said, there was an older gentleman. I'm not exactly sure how old he was. I believe he was in his mid-30s or mid-40s. And when they apprehended him, it was a whole excessive force thing because they... and I think there was a little bit of video evidence. I saw some of it. And they were showing that there was a lot of officers on the guy. I mean, he was a fairly large individual, but it didn't seem like he was fighting back very much. And when they apprehended him, one of them used a chokehold, which I know for a fact is prohibited by not only law here in New York against police officers, but it's also like I'm trying to think of the word, a policy amongst the police officers, because I know a New York City police officer, or I have family who are New York City police officers also, but I have a friend who's an undercover officer, and he said that they are not allowed to use a chokehold on anybody because of that exact reason, because I can tell you right now as a martial artist, and I believe you said you're a martial artist as well, Bobby, anybody who's using a chokehold, you're at a proper chokehold form, you're not cutting off their windpipe, you're actually cutting off circulation of blood flow to the brain. So, depending on what this person did to this individual, it's absolutely excessive force. Now, I can't speculate in either direction whether the man, yes, the man was selling individual cigarettes, but you know what, who was he harming? So that's the whole point here, is that this gentleman, this is why I'm bringing this to light, because this gentleman needs to, people need to pay attention to what happened to this gentleman, because the simple fact is Michael Brown did what he did, and we can all argue the facts, but the jury is in, and it seems to me that everybody's arguing and raping and pillaging, and another young man actually was shot on the same street that Michael Brown was actually killed on. I can't remember that young man's name because they didn't talk much about him, but I do know that he was sitting in his car texting somebody, and somebody just walked up and shot him in the head. So where is his justice? And that's the whole thing. If you're killed by a random individual, it doesn't seem like the African American or any community for that matter cares. But when it's a white police officer against a young black man, that's when things seem to be a problem. And Charles Barkley even came on CNN today and was saying that the African American community needs to stop blaming everybody else for the problems and he's catching a lot of problems for it. And I can't remember the name of the news anchor, but she even said, there's a lot of, you're catching a lot of flack, and he's like, I don't do social media. I don't sit around paying attention to what people think about, I don't sit around thinking about what people think about me. And that's a pretty good example to lead by. But that gentleman is pretty enlightened when it comes to all these problems, and I gotta admit, he doesn't seem like a smart individual, but if you watch a lot of his interviews that he's been doing lately, he's been pissing off a lot of people because he's basically saying that people need to take responsibility for their actions and stop blaming government entities and other people and other races for their problems, and they need to just step up and say, no, I screwed up, I did this, I did that, and that is the main problem. So but there's all these people coming up and arguing, oh, well, this guy's a jerk, and I'm sure they have a lot more colorful language for him. But the point is that there's still a voice of reason amongst all of this. I can't talk today, guys. Jesus. There's still a voice of reason amongst all of this when it comes to people saying, hey, you know what? We got to stop looking at it as a black-white thing and stop looking at it and start looking at it as an accountability thing, because it doesn't matter what race you are. If you act like an idiot, you're going to get shot at, and you're going to put people in a bad position. Let me
intervene there. Race sells.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Race sells. So who's buying? Everybody.
Absolutely.
If a black person starts out doing the kill whites thing, the white people jump on and start doing the let's fight the blacks, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So if you want to incite a riot, the best way to do it is start talking race.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, besides politics and besides religion. Now, one thing that most people don't even know about, I don't even know if you knew this, the Oath Keepers were in Ferguson protecting a certain amount of buildings. Okay? And they had like 3 or 4 businesses, not buildings, 3 or 4 businesses that were within, I think it was like a 2 or 3 building area that nothing happened to those buildings because the Oath Keepers were there protecting it. The police told them, you cannot protect these buildings. You guys got to get the hell out of here and everything else. Well, of course, the Oath Keepers didn't go anywhere. They stayed there. The cops were caught on video, using stun grenades and those, I'm trying to think of the other flashbang grenades. Okay? And they did it inside of something, I think it was a car or something. They threw it inside there, and the thing caught fire, and
Really?
it set the whole building on fire, and that building caught other cars on fire. Then they also set fire to a car dealership all the way down the whole block. It was the police department. It wasn't people that were protesting and whatever. It was the police department.
Wow. See,
And anybody that doesn't believe me, go ahead and look it up on YouTube. They show there's a guy that videoed the whole thing, and he videoed the cops using the flashbang in this car or whatever it was. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they were dropping it in there, and then they show a video of the building later on burning, and then they show the building like the next day and all the things that were caught on fire because of the flashbang.
See, I also personally remember watching on live TV, people were walking down the street, and there was a lot, I didn't even see any crazy, violence going on, and the police were lobbing tear gas at the people, but they were also, the reporters were getting, if anybody was watching live that night, the reporters were getting caught in the tear gas too, and they were coughing their brains out because they couldn't keep a gas mask on and talk to the camera. So, but I remember watching people screaming, "What are you doing? Why are you throwing those at us? We're trying to leave." And they were actually not able to go anywhere because the tear gas was causing them so much pain and discomfort, and they couldn't see that they weren't able to disperse, and that just made it worse. So, the countermeasures that the riot police were using, you can just plainly tell that they don't work. It's just, I understand people want to. I also don't understand one thing is why the hell people brought children and young adults with them. I shouldn't even say young adults. I would say teenagers with them to an area where they knew that there was most likely going to be riots and looting like that. That was just irresponsible on the behalf of the attendees on their own accord. Why the heck would you bring a child to something like that? I understand maybe people thought, maybe they will indict them and it'll be a celebration. But even then, they were even showing on CNN that there were people screaming for both sides. So personally, there would have been stupidity and rioting, no matter what the decision was. On top of which, even if he was indicted, he still could have been acquitted. So there's still, no matter what, there's still so many ways that this all would have ended the same way. There's so many people saying, oh, they should have just indicted him. Yeah, well, he could have been acquitted. And if he most likely would have been acquitted, then they would have been rioting again. So what's the point? But I see what you're saying is they were only protecting certain buildings. But at the same time, riot tactics only work in mass. And they can't spread themselves out over a large period, or I shouldn't say over a large period, over a large area, because they don't have the manpower in that particular area. It's not like a place like New York. But even so, New York doesn't even have a SWAT team. We have to call SWAT teams from out of state if an issue like that happens. If we have like a hostage situation or something like that. And I heard that straight out of a police officer's mouth. So basically, and it's kind of a good thing. Ferguson showed how ill-prepared our government, quote-unquote, actually is, and how that they're not really as powerful as they like to claim to be. Yes, they're militarizing, but they couldn't even keep a group of unorganized protesters from doing stupid stuff and running amok throughout the city. So you mean to tell me that they can lock down? I don't know. I don't think they have the ability, after seeing all this, I don't think they have the ability to lock down the country unless they have something major behind them. Because like a lot of people are saying, oh, martial law. Yeah, I believe that it could happen. But right now, with a group of, looking at it this way, is with a group of unorganized idiots running around, running amok, and they can't keep that under control. And then you're going to take a bunch of organized, well-trained individuals who would be ticked off that they pulled some stupid crap like this and actually resist. I don't think that they could handle the American populace. And I think that is what scares them, which is a good thing. I forgot who it was, but I recently saw a gentleman on the news said that I believe that American citizens should own the firearms that make the government a little nervous. Because if they're not nervous, then who's going to keep them in check? But everybody keeps talking about, how they're trying to bring down the martial law. They're trying to lock everything down and make everybody scared. I think today proved, even to them, because I think they were trying to test it out, I think today just proved to them that they're absolutely not ready, which is a good thing for us. Which means because more and more people are becoming awake to all this, more and more people are starting to listen to alternative media sources like us. And thank you guys so much for doing that. But back to what I was saying is so many more people are turning to alternative media sources that have nothing to gain from spreading the truth like we do, besides getting it out there and educating people, that they are starting to realize that it's not going to work. So they're going to either have to go to the drawing board, or they're going to get backed against the wall, get desperate, and do something stupid. And honestly, with the holidays coming up, I've been thinking about it. And one thing that makes me nervous every year, and I don't know if it does for you, Bobby, is especially being a New Yorker myself, I get really scared around New Year's Eve. And I want all you guys to, be aware, especially with all the threats and all the stupidity that's been going on with the Middle East lately. I think that there's a major potential for somebody to do something stupid on New Year's Eve, in Times Square especially. And the reason is I work public events, and I see how easily people get trampled and how easily people get hurt when people get just a little bit riled at a big concert. Now, you take thousands and thousands of people, which, of course, again, like I said, I'm a New Yorker. I've been in New York. I don't really like to go into the city during holidays because it's so crowded. But one year I went in on the St. Patrick's Day parade, and there were so many people on the streets that literally you had to force your way through, because you couldn't be out in the street, because there was like the floats and all that stuff going through the streets, and obviously you couldn't get in their way. Anyway, pushing through all those crowds made me realize that if something bad happened, most of the casualties would probably be from people getting trampled. Just like they say, you don't want to yell fire in a crowded movie theater for no reason. If somebody were to set off I'm thinking Boston bombing, status, if somebody were to just set off a small explosion, people would panic and they would start running in all directions, and it just scares the crap out of me. I've been on the edge of my seat every year when the ball drops, just because I think that they're going to do some stupid crap at the stroke of midnight just to be smartasses, because they know it's a major holiday for us. On top of which, it being New York, and we all know what happened, what is it, 15 years ago, 16 years ago now? Anyway, my point is keep an eye out, because I honestly think within the next couple of years, something bad's going to happen in New York. I don't know. Have you ever suspected that, Bobby? Because personally, I watch every year just in case something bad does happen. And honestly, I'm surprised with how easy it is to do something stupid like that, why something hasn't happened yet. And I think, honestly, I'm trying to think here, like either they're stopping them from doing it. Maybe they've already stopped people from doing something like that on New Year's Eve and just haven't said anything about it. Or simply enough, they've just haven't had the opportunity to do it. But like a lot of people, say false flag with the Boston bombing, which I personally think that it has to be 100% false flag. But I don't know. What do you think? You think that there's a potential for something like that to go on New Year's Eve? We might have lost Bobby for a little while there. See if we can get him back. Anyway, but like I was saying, I personally think that there's a major, major problem with the security down in New York. Yes, they like to act like they've got it all on lockdown. It's simple enough to make something with a high explosive. We've all seen what these idiots can do over in the Middle East. So imagine what they would do on a mass scale in Times Square. You know what I mean? And I pray every year that it does not happen, because I would never, ever want to see anything bad happen to any American citizen. But honestly, folks, just think about it. Think about how easy it would be for somebody to just put something under a jacket and stand in a large crowd like that, and then cause a mass panic and hurt a lot of people in the meantime. So I honestly want you guys to all just, think about this, be very careful this year, because they're keeping it secret, but there's a lot of what you would call quote unquote a terrorist attack here on our soil, but they're covering it up, and they're not even mentioning what's going on. They right down, close to me in New Jersey, a young man was sitting at a stoplight. He was about 19 years old.
Right.
And we got you back. All right, and he was sitting at a stoplight, and 5 individuals of, I'll say, alleged Muslim faith walked up behind him, and one of them had a pistol, and they shot him 5 times in the head. And then they got in the car, and they drove him to a closed parking garage, and they left him there. And it was all on video, and they never even mentioned it in the news. I read this on I believe I read it in some I think it was like the New York Times or something, in a small blurb. I know it was a reputable news source online. But my point is this, is that there's small attacks going on. They may not be major bombs going off, but there's small things going on all over the place, and they're not mentioning it. Which brings me to my point that I was talking about the other night, is that the media is picking and choosing what they want to blow out of proportion. And they're showing how easily they can manipulate the opinion of the mass, I should say, I was going to say the mass media. They're trying to manipulate the opinions of people who are, what do you call it? I'm trying to think. They're basically manipulating the opinion of the masses and getting people all riled up over stupid, superficial subjects. Meanwhile, all the big stuff's going on behind the scenes. And that's what I don't understand, why people don't seem to get that. Like, there's still so many people who believe all the rhetoric and all the propaganda, basically, that comes spewing out of the news sources. And I was talking to an older gentleman who, he was a little bit young, but he was around in the World War II era. And he was telling me, he was like, I can't believe how much propaganda is actually going on the TV today. He's like, it reminds me of Nazi Germany. He's like, back when I was a young man, he's like, all I ever heard stories of was, Nazi Germany. All the media was just talking about how great this and politics that and da 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 da. And there's patriotism and there's loving your country like here in America, but then there's straight up propaganda and rhetoric and indoctrinating people to think a certain way politically by just I can't even really, I don't know, it drives me nuts trying to explain this to people because I don't even know where to begin half the time. Like, sometimes I want to go all the way back into the 50s and the 40s when all this dumb crap started going on with the gold standard and our economy. But most people just kind of look at you like you got 10 heads. Most people, and that's the problem, most people aren't informed. And the thing is that a lot of the people who listen to the stuff like we're putting out, they're already informed. So,
yeah, but you know what? Let me say something. It's not that people are uninformed. Okay? There's a lot of people that just don't want to believe the truth. Okay? No matter how much you sit there and tell them, hey, that's blue, that's blue, that's blue, that's blue. Okay? And you don't have proof in your hand. And the damn thing is blue. Okay? The government will tell them, nope, it's a purple with a blah, 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 whatever. Just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
They will believe it because it's coming out of the government's mouth. Now, just because the government says it, a lot of people want to believe it because they still believe in their government because they're not awake, okay? And there's some people that they hear from their friends what the truth really is, but they don't believe it. They never believe it. Here, perfect example, okay? I'm going to call somebody out right now on the show, okay? And a lot of people know who I'm talking about. Chief Mark Kessler, you piece of shit, okay? I called you out from the beginning. I knew what you were from the beginning, okay? I knew that you were an undercover. I knew that you were in there with the government. I knew that you were being a sneaky little bastard. I called it from the beginning.
He did.
So every picture that I knew, I got into arguments with this guy on people's pages, Blaine Cooper's page a bunch of times. Blaine Cooper went at it with him. We knew, okay? And you and I were talking about it earlier, and you said, I remember the show you called him out, and said that.
Yep, I do.
It's true. So people like that, okay, are the kind of people from what he did, okay? If you read about the things that he did and listen to the interview that he did on Fox News and hear the things that he says and the way that he set the people up and everything else, okay, he was going after anybody that stands up for the Second Amendment. He pinpointed people that are for the Second Amendment and pro-Second Amendment, okay? And he pinpointed groups that he said that he found to be dangerous and this and that. Bullshit. Okay? It was a scam. It was a scam. Just like when he said, I'm going to Arizona, and I'm going down to the border, and I'm going to see what's going on, and I'm going to go stand out on the border with the militia and the patriots and this and that. He went down there and was down there for about 3 hours and turned around and took off, and Blaine Cooper called him out. Right then and there. Called him out on the spot and said, excuse me, we're here on the border. Where are you, Chief Mark Kessler? And guess what? Kessler started talking crap back to Blaine Cooper, saying Blaine Cooper ain't no patriot. He ain't this, he ain't that. Are you kidding me? Mark Kessler, you couldn't hold Blaine Cooper's balls. You pussy. Sorry.
It's all right. you know, hey, that's what we're here for. We're here to get our message out and get what we wanted to say out. So, you know, tell them what you want to say and tell them loud. Because honestly, I agree. I mean, how the hell are you going to sit there and not put your money where your mouth is and then talk smack to the people who are? That's just hypocritical. That's hypocrisy at its best. So, I actually have some more sound here. Going back to Ferguson, I'm going to play the audio here. Bobby, you won't be able to hear it. This guy on YouTube named the Yankee Marshal, he's a gun guy. He really knows his stuff. He collects pistols and rifles, and he usually does a lot of handgun videos. He also has this Gary the Glock series. It's really hysterical, but I digress. He decided to put his gun knowledge to good use and dispel some myths about what people are picking apart in the Darren Wilson testimony. And basically, I'm going to play the audio for you here in a minute, but go to his page and check out the Yankee Marshal. He's a really, really smart guy. He adds a lot. He does a lot of gun reviews, but he adds, he's funny. So let me get back to the audio here. So here we go.
I want to make a quick video this holiday eve, even though I don't know if Thanksgiving Eve actually counts as a holiday. All I know is it's after midnight, and I don't count calories on holidays, so as of midnight tonight, I'm eating whatever the fuck I want to eat. So to me, it's a holiday. But I want to take a moment tonight to make a video addressing some of the issues that I've had people asking me about today, addressing some of the testimony by the officer, I believe his name is Darren Wilson, that shot the Michael Brown in St. Louis. There's some things that people have been saying to me today that I wanted to address. One, I believe this guy was issued a SIG P229. That's his issue weapon. And today some people have been saying to me, he says in his testimony that the suspect got his hand on the gun and therefore the gun wouldn't fire because the suspect had his hand on the gun. And they're like, well, I would never own a SIG now because the guy putting his hand on the gun made it to where it wouldn't fire. Well, I hate to break it to you, that's called pushing it out of battery, and that can happen to almost any semi-automatic gun. Pretty much any semi-automatic gun would have the same problem if someone did the same thing to the gun. Even some revolvers will have a problem if they get their hands on it and they make the cylinder not rotate. So if you've got a handgun and someone gets their hands on it, that's a bad thing. That's why it's so important to do this position, when you're fighting somebody off with a handgun, because you don't want them getting their hand on your gun. Now, the second part of that testimony that people are talking about is he said, the guy had his hand on my gun, therefore it wouldn't fire. I pulled the trigger, it went click. And then I pulled the trigger again, it went click again, but it wouldn't fire. But then finally on a third time, it fired. And people are like, well, why is the gun going click? Isn't that just something we see in TVs and movies? Don't we all hate that? Doesn't it bother us? When the good guy pulls out his gun and he goes, freeze, and then he goes, click, 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 with a semi-automatic. We know that just doesn't work that way. And then they throw the gun at him or something, which I don't understand either. You're out of ammo, why throw your gun away? At least keep it and smack him with it or something. So people have been saying to me, does it make sense that the gun went click, click, click? Well, yes, it does make sense that the gun went click, 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 because like I said, he was issued a SIG P229, and I'll demonstrate here why that makes sense. So, as I said, pretty much any semi-automatic is going to have that same problem, that if someone grabs your gun, it can knock it out of battery. Take this Glock, for instance. Now, everybody ignore the pig nose on this Glock, because since this isn't the Glock I use, I haven't fixed the pig nose on it. I'll get around to it someday. So ignore that while I'm showing you here. But I'm going to show you how if this gun gets knocked out of battery, it won't fire, but it won't click. So there, the gun's out of battery now. Someone's got their hand on top of it. The gun won't fire. Trigger pulls, but it doesn't click. You don't hear it click, click, click. You just hear the trigger moving. But, you let go of it, now it'll fire. But there's no clicking. But let's remember, he wasn't issued a Glock. He was issued a SIG P229, which is a completely different story. This here SIG P229, this is pretty much what he was issued. And if I knock this gun out of battery and pull the trigger, it clicks. Hear the click? There's a very audible, loud click there. Then if I let it go, it would fire. So having it go click twice and then firing, that makes perfect sense. This is what he was issued, and this gun will click if you pull the trigger and it's out of battery. So as you can see, sometimes the click, click, click is just movie nonsense that irritates so many of us. But in this case, him saying that the gun went click, click when he pulled the trigger the first two times, that not only makes sense, it's the way it would have actually worked.
All right, so that's some interesting stuff there. So again, just more and more evidence compiling up that basically is just showing that Officer Darren Wilson was not, in fact, lying, and that all the eyewitnesses were either lying or weren't giving a whole truth, or heard it from somebody else, which we all know, like I said on a previous show, is the game of telephone. We've all played that as children, and we know how that works out. So the long story short is I don't understand why people are still standing behind this when the evidence is proving that people were lying about their testimony, and that so far not that everything may be the truth, but so far everything that has been provable has been proven to be more in the direction of Officer Darren Wilson. And if I was looking at this as a juror, which I have, I watched a case unfold because I was attending court hearings to watch somebody else get what they deserved, because, like I said, I witnessed gun violence, and my family members had to testify, so we were all there for moral support. So I was there the whole step of the way. So I learned how jurors approach those situations, and because of the fact that I was not a witness to the exact situation, that I basically had a juror's point of view, and I looked at it this way: if the evidence is compiled more in the direction of one person than the other, then you have to accept it. It doesn't matter what the case is. And yes, with that system, there are people who do fall through the cracks, and a lot of people like to argue that system is flawed, and I'm not going to argue back with them. That is the truth. But unless you can come up with something better, which I urge anybody here, if you know something better than the court, if you know a way that's better than the court systems in the way they work now, then be my guest and go ahead and change them, because I personally can't figure out a better way to enforce the laws.
Okay, but what about the 4 kids that came forward that were Mike Brown's friends that said they lied? They lied about it. That it's not true. Okay? And that, the cops did pretty much did his job, and Brown was guilty, and he was a thug, and that's pretty much it. You know what? Should the kid have died? No! No, nobody should die. Okay, but should you be robbing stores?
Absolutely.
No.
Plus the fact.
So, I mean, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Okay, but, trying to fight with the cops and, robbing a store and, and being a thug and hanging out on the street corner, and, he was a known vice lord, which is a gang that's here in Chicago and other states and everything else. It's actually a very big African-American gang, okay? And, he was a known gangbanger and everything else, so he lived the lifestyle. He knew. Look at how many pictures were floating around with him holding guns and holding drugs and everything else. This was not a poster child for the Boy Scouts.
Nope.
Okay? So, anybody that sits there and argues, the cop was wrong, the cop should have lost his job, the cop this, the cop that.
And he
had, really grow up.
And he had prior assault charges.
His job. Roy Chin, who is running for the Secretary of State for the state of Missouri. Okay, Roy Chin, who happens to be half African American and half Chinese. He came on to the show with Becky and I believe you were on the show also.
Yeah, I was. I was just listening in that day, though.
Okay, well, he came on the show with Becky and I. He made it very clear. The police officer did nothing wrong. He did his job. The kid was guilty. He tried to fight with the cop. Whatever.
Yep.
I guess he tried to yank his gun, whatever the case may be. And guess what? It was either him or it was the cop. Okay? That's what it comes down to.
And the media... The media is 100% to blame because they were making all these erroneous statements. For instance, I believed it too. I'll admit, I believed the one statement. They said that Officer Wilson had a fractured eye socket. Now, I don't know where they got that information, but I believed it. So that's the whole thing here, is that was one thing that was proven. So why isn't that anything that shows Michael Brown in a negative light isn't disproven? I mean, you can even see, if you pay attention, the young man who was supposedly with Michael Brown during the said incident, he said on the news that, and I've watched his testimony the whole time. He's very robotic, very measured statements. It seems like he's trying his hardest not to mess up and tell a different story, first of all. But the second thing is that if you look in the video of Michael Brown when he committed that strong arm robbery, that he was in the video with him. So I don't understand why he wasn't picked up as an accessory. That's the thing I don't get here, is that if you look, you can clearly tell the individual that is given his side of the story is in the video helping Michael. Well, I wouldn't say helping, but he did not exactly stop him from doing it. Is in the video. So why he wasn't picked up as an accessory? Why hasn't Michael Brown's father been brought up on charges for inciting riots? And that's the whole thing here, is that it's becoming almost like a reverse discrimination. They're afraid that if they try to charge anybody else, that it's going to cause more problems. Instead of putting their foot down and being strong and saying, hey, you know what? No, we're not going to play your stupid game. If you loot, if you act stupid, if you riot, we're going to arrest you and we're going to put you in jail, and that's it. And that's the whole thing here, is that, you know, people. I don't understand why it seems mostly the African American community seems, at least the less educated African American community, seem to think that it's okay to go out into the streets and destroy and do things. And yes, there were young people and old people trying to stop people and yelling at people, saying, "Why are you doing this to your community?" But you know what? The majority.
So you know, you're a smart kid, and I'm gonna call you kid because I'm old enough to be your victim. Okay? Look, you're a property of your environment. Okay? Your parents are the people that are responsible for you and your actions and how you are going to be once you are over the age of 18. Okay? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
You're absolutely right. I say to people, I've heard the line that states that when you're raising a child, you're not raising a child, you're raising an adult in the future. Or I should say, you're raising a future adult.
Right. So they are actually the teachers of what his future was going to be. Okay? And as you see those two on TV, okay, living it up like Jim and Tammy Baker, okay, for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, look up Jim and Tammy Baker. They used to be evangelists, okay? They were TV evangelists, and they'd go on TV, and Tammy would cry, she had on all this makeup, and Tammy would cry, and Jim would stay in the background. Just says that's so funny. Just says that's so funny. What makes it just here? Well, Jim went to jail, and he eventually died, I believe. And Tammy, well, she had a makeup line or something like that, and she ended up losing a ton of weight, and I think that she died or something too. I mean, the moral to the story is, okay, they're trying to be actors in Hollywood. They're trying to do whatever they can to make the almighty dollar. It's pretty much what it boils down to. And you know what? Do you think that they really even cared about their kid? Yes, to a certain extent, I think that they cared about him. But I mean, like I said, he was a product of his environment. He probably, you know, pushed them around a little bit here and there. He was probably a thug and a goon and didn't give a damn about how he acted towards people and how he treated people or anything else.
You know, I can tell you.
Am I here to beat him up? No, I'm not. And you know what? And I know it kind of sounds that way, but I am so sick and tired of people that keep coming to the defense for this kid, and I don't understand why. All of the information, all of the evidence that they have come up with shows the kid was guilty. Guilty.
That's what I don't understand about this all, and that's why I'm banging my head against the wall, because you know what I think it is at this point is the people who are standing behind him are afraid that if they switch sides now, then they're going to have to admit that they were backing up lies, and that all this destruction and all this hate and all these people who are all the lives that were changed forever in some form or another, whether or not they lost a loved one to the rioting, or like the young man who was shot on the very street that Michael Brown was shot just for no reason at all, who is also an African American, but you don't hear about him. And I believe, I don't remember exactly where, but there was a young man who was playing with an older airsoft pistol in his yard that didn't have the bright orange tip, which really, we all know really doesn't matter. And he was shot because he reached for his waistband. Now, I saw a picture of this young man, and he did not look intimidating. He didn't look like he would do anything stupid. Police are becoming very trigger happy. One day, I was pulled over not recently, it was like 2 years ago, because I had an out headlight. The police officer asked me where I was going, blah, 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 blah. He asked me for my license and registration. I said, sure, I got to get it out of my glove box. I moved my right hand too quickly, and I glanced back over, and he had put his hand on his pistol. And I looked at him and I said, you're just itching to use that thing, aren't you? We were out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, like...
Look at all the black police, okay? Black police officers that kill white people, okay? Just happened the other day, 2-3 days ago. A black officer killed a white Caucasian kid, okay? Where are the police? I mean, where's Jesse Jackson? Where's Al Sharpton? Where's all these other groups, Farrakhan and whoever, coming out in defense for the white man for once? Seriously.
Yeah, I find it funny that you don't see well-educated individuals, whether they're African American or Caucasian, standing to the defense of Michael Brown. It seems like all the people who are standing in these crowds are these welfare idiots who, they back up whatever, they just believe whatever they're told. They're sheeple. They're just walking around. Oh, all right. This is what I'm told. This is what's more convenient. I get to be emotional. I get to be something. I get to be stupid. And I think that's what it is. I think some people just want to be offended. They don't care what it's about. Just like on the internet when it comes to crappy crappy comments and everything else. I think at least I'll say that these people are doing it in person, and they're not doing it from the anonymity of a avatar, I guess you could call it. These people are actually out there putting their faces out there, but at the same time, these aren't people who have credible. They're just not credible, really. I mean, think about it. I would not want if.